Are there any obscure comic book characters who you love? Despite the cultural dominance superheroes have achieved over the last decade or so, not every superhero team manages to get a movie and a lunchbox. Welcome to Top 10 Nerd. Today we will be taking a look at the top 10 superhero teams you've never heard of. Let's dive right in. Number 10, Alpha Flight. This is for sure the least obscure entry on the list, as I choose to talk about them constantly, and Alpha Flight has been somewhat reinvented in the last few years and changed into an international space force being led by Captain Marvel, but we are talking about the original team. First appearing in X-Men number 120, Alpha Flight was Canada's answer to the Avengers, with members with unique abilities from all over Canada. Unlike most super teams who are always working together, Alpha Flight operated in more of a Mission Impossible, James Bond kind of style, by choosing heroes from their roster and assigning each of them to specific missions that they would handle as individuals and pairs, only coming together as a full team in the case of extreme threats. Despite multiple tries by Marvel to give the team their own ongoing series, Alpha Flight has never quite caught on in the States. Perhaps they are just too specifically Canadian for a readership who tends to prefer American-centric stories, or maybe they just haven't been given the right push into the mainstream. Either way, Alpha Flight remains a team that not a huge amount of readers have heard of, and even fewer have actually read. Although, they did appear in one episode of the classic X-Men cartoon. Small victories. Number 9, Force Works. When it was determined that the Avengers' ever-expanding roster should be better divided up across the United States, rather than everyone working out of New York, the West Coast Avengers were formed. This experiment didn't end up working out, and the team was soon disbanded. In a typically Tony Stark move, Tony Stark decided that he should instead fund and create his own superhero team to help protect the West Coast. The resulting team was Force Works. The original team consisted of Iron Man, Spider-Woman, Wonder Man, and US Agent, with Scarlet Witch being chosen as the team leader. The team operated for a while, taking on threats like the Mandarin and Kang the Conqueror, but the team was plagued with internal issues. Despite Scarlet Witch being the team leader, Iron Man was constantly undermining her authority and forcing the team to carry out his personal vendettas. This attitude culminated in him forcing the team to brutally kidnap Hawkeye, which got him booted from the team. Force Works carried on without him for a while, but eventually decided to disband, although they were briefly brought back under the leadership of Maria Hill in order to fight the Robot Revolution. Force Works is an obscure offshoot of the already relatively obscure West Coast Avengers, however they did serve as the supporting cast for Iron Man's 90s animated series. Number 8, the Outlaws. Not to be confused with the team from DC Comics, Marvel's Outlaws are a group of heroes, all with a criminal past, who are led by Spider-Man and Silver Sable. The group formed when photographic evidence came out implicating Spider-Man in a robbery. Wanting to prove the innocence of the man who had helped them reform, Prowler, Rocket Racer, Will-O-the-Wisp, Paladin, and Sandman all began searching for evidence that would prove the webbed wall crawler's innocence. They discovered that Spidey was actually working for Silver Sable, and that what he had stolen was actually incriminating evidence against a member of the Maggia crime family. Impressed with the group's skills, Silver Sable brought them on as freelancers, and the team would occasionally come together, usually whenever Spider-Man was being framed or something and needed support from outside of the Avengers. Although some of the various members of the team are relatively well-known characters, their team isn't well known, as they come together so rarely and haven't teamed up since 1991. Number 7, Psi Force. When a telepathic CIA agent named Emmett Proudhawk had a vision about 5 young people with psychic abilities being protected by a hawk, he decided to track down the people in his vision and bring them together to become Psi Force. He got most of them together but was killed by a Russian operative. The 5 psychic youths discovered that when they all touched Proudhawk's mystic medallion, it summoned a creature called the Psi-Hawk, who would help them defeat their enemies. You know, like Captain Planet. The youths worked together to defeat an evil Russian paranormal named Rodstov, and they were chased by members of the CIA, the KGB, and a shadowy organization called the Medusa Web, who eventually brought the kids on as freelance agents. Although they had their own 32-issue series, the fact that this Marvel team has no recognizable superheroes and is based in Earth 148,611 rather than the mainstream Earth 616 universe keeps them pretty obscure. Number 6, Force of July. The first DC entry on this list, Force of July were an Americana-themed group who often found themselves at odds with the Outsiders. The Force answered to the American Security Agency and were tasked with eliminating anyone whose activities were deemed to be subversive to America's interests by any means necessary. Some of the team's members include Lady Liberty, Silent Majority, Sparkler, Mayflower, and their leader, Major Victory. Although they aren't technically villains, their fanatic patriotism prevented them from seeing that they were being manipulated by their handler, who was using them to help his scheme to create a satellite called Project Orwell that would have been used to spy on people using their televisions. This plot was stopped by the outsiders, and the Force of July later found themselves fighting against the Suicide Squad, who killed Sparkler and Mayflower. The remaining members ended up joining the squad but did not last long on the team's roster. Number 5, the Inferior Five. Coming from Earth 12 in the DC multiverse, this team are the nepo babies of a team of heroes called the Freedom Brigade. When the Freedom Brigade retired, the heroes encouraged their children to follow in their footsteps, and they started a team dedicated to protecting the people of Megaopolis. Known as the Fearsome Five, the members of this team, Awkward Man, Blimp, Dumb Bunny, and Whitefeather, have somewhat useless and conflicting powers, and although they usually manage to save the day, it is usually a result of dumb luck rather than skill. Their lameness led to the people of Megalopolis calling their champions the Inferior Five, which the team eventually decided to adopt as their official name. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, their world was destroyed, and as a result they were sent to comic book limbo, which is a realm similar to the Island of Misfit Toys, where characters who are written out of continuity remain until they're brought back into continuity. Number 4, the League of Losers. In the Marvel Universe of Earth 6215, a time-traveling villain from the future named Kronoke used his knowledge of the past to travel back in time to the present with an army and kill all of Earth's mightiest heroes. Fortunately, the records he was working off of did not include any reference to these C-list Marvel characters because none of them had ever done anything that was worthy of note. Darkhawk, Speedball, Dagger, Terror, X-23, Gravity, and Sleepwalker were thus able to take on Kronoke and travel back to before the villain had stolen his time travel tech and stop him. Although this stranded the team in the future, it also created a divergent timeline known as Earth 2992, where the villain's scheme was never an issue. Wow, time travel can be such a pain to explain. Number 3, Section 8. One of the strangest teams in the DC universe, Section 8 is a group of what I will very generously call heroes who operate out of Gotham City. Each member of the team is more bizarre than the last, so buckle up. Shakes is a schizophrenic with a speech impediment. Jean de Baton is a stereotypical Frenchman who hits people with a baton. Defenestrator is a massive former Arkham inmate who carries around a window to smash over his enemies' heads. Flemgem spits massive amounts of snot at his enemies in order to blind them. Bueno Excelente is just some guy who sneaks up on his enemies and then essays them. Dog Welder is a crazy person who welds dogs to people's faces, and Friendly Fire is a hero who can shoot energy beams but is incapable of hitting anything he aims at, usually hitting his teammates instead. They are led by Sixpack, an alcoholic who pees himself and then attacks people with a beer bottle. Shockingly, this team has not gotten a big budget movie, and all of them were killed after an encounter with the mini-angled ones, with the exception of Sixpack, who suddenly manifested reality-warping powers to defeat the villains and save the world. Number 2, the Neo Knights. After having great success publishing comic books based on Hasbro's line of G.I. Joe toys, the two companies collaborated again to create the series that would give much-needed backstory for Hasbro's new line of toys, the Transformers. A lot of the Transformers mythology came from these comics, but due to the rights of certain characters remaining with the comic book company, not all of the elements were brought over for the television series or subsequent films. One of these elements is the superhero team, the Neo Knights. When the Autobots returned to space, leaving no one to protect their longtime ally, GB Blackrock, he decided to bring together a team of superpowered humans in order to fight any Decepticons that caused trouble on Earth. The members are Circuit Breaker, a woman who was paralyzed in an encounter with the Transformers and has developed a special suit that allows her to walk as well as fly and shoot repulsor beams. Also on the team are Thunder Punch, a man who can enlarge his feet and hands and punch with heightened strength, Rapture, a woman who can cause any sentient being to shut down and enter an elaborate fantasy, and Dynamo, who could channel the planet's latent energies. They are extremely obscure, only showing up in the original US and UK Transformers comics, and due to Hasbro having the rights for most of the Transformers and Marvel owning the rights to this team, they are likely to remain so for quite some time. Number 1, the Forgotten Heroes. They may have more appearances than some of the other teams on this list, and some of their members are relatively well known, but with a name like the Forgotten Heroes, how could they not end up on the top spot for this list? The team consists of a bunch of DC heroes who all stumbled upon ancient golden pyramids. When the heroes tried to report what they had found, the US government disavowed them and ruined each of their reputations to discredit them. Immortal Man brought all the heroes together and filled them in that the pyramids were part of a scheme by Vandal Savage to kill Superman. They formed a team together and teamed up with the Man of Steel to stop Vandal's plot. The team lives up to its name with members like Atomic Knight, Ballistic Congo Bill, Cave Carson, Dolphin, The Ray, Vigilante, and Resurrection Man, as well as a few slightly more well-known heroes such as Rip Hunter, Animal Man, and Rick Flag. Any other obscure superhero teams people should know about? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more Top 10 Nerd.